Welcome to the Hungarian Living podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sabo-Voss. Our goal is to discover, celebrate, and share Hungarian heritage and encourage you to do it too. We'll touch on food, travel, history, music, and language, and share stories from our listeners. We're glad you're here. This is a podcast where we'll encourage you to dig deeper to learn about your Hungarian heritage in a variety of ways. We'll have thought-provoking conversations and share resources. So whether you know a little or a lot about being Hungarian, this is the place to be. Welcome to the Hungarian Living podcast. I'm your host, Liz Sabo-Voss, and today I'm visiting with Lilla Horvath. I have not had the pleasure to meet Lilla face-to-face yet, but I can already tell that we get along. So Lilla, it has been so fun to get to know you. Welcome.
Thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure being here. A real pleasure.
Well, before we chat about all your embroidery projects, let's talk a bit about your Hungarian heritage. So which side does your Hungarian heritage come from, your mom or your dad?
Actually, both sides.
Woohoo!
Yeah, they both came in 1956, but separately with their own families, because my mom was only 15 and my dad was 21, I believe. And he came out with a buddy of his without telling his dad because he didn't want his dad to get in trouble. And my mom's family, all her brothers and sisters, mom and dad, came across on the boat. Yeah, and they met in Montreal, where there was already an established community of Hungarians. Mm-hmm. And they met in at a ball, at Hungarian ball.
Oh, fun.
It was very romantic.
Yes, it sure sounds like it. And what area of Hungary are they from?
My mom was from Budapest. She passed away last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My father's from Székesfehérvár, which is a very historic area. I also wanted to mention that my mother's family were all artists and musicians, mainly. And my dad's family are doctors and engineers.
Okay.
So I tend to see my upbringing as having been influenced by both sides in the way that I approach things and the way that I think.
Yeah. Well, surely you've been influenced by both, I would say. You know, we see that in our kids too, where they think like one or both of us. And so I think that's pretty cool. So they met in Montreal, but then where did you grow up?
We grew up in Montreal. My sisters and I were four in the family. Yeah. We all grew up in Montreal. And then I moved to Vancouver 25 years ago. Okay.
So are your sisters still in Montreal, or have they?
Two of them are. One is in Halifax.
Okay. And so where you said there was a Hungarian community already established in Montreal. So I would assume that there was some Hungarian influence there, or would you say that it mainly came from within your family?
It came from, both within the family and the community. The community was a very large part of our lives. We were at the Hungarian church, actually, which was built in 1962. Okay. So I think shortly after my parents met. And the congregation had already around 2,000 parishioners. And they all got together and built the biggest Hungarian church in Montreal. And so our lives centered around the church, where we attended Hungarian school, Hungarian scouts on Saturdays, and then Hungarian folk dancing on weekdays. And then we went to summer camp, and then went winter camp, and then fall camp and spring camp, and then spent every conceivable holiday at the church.
Sure. So it's extended family, actually.
Yes. Actually, I regard my friends' parents as my parents because they were always there. They're always around and teaching us and just being there for all of us.
Wow, what a wonderful community to be a part of, to be growing up in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you felt very supported and encouraged.
Very much. And loved.
Yes, that too. Yeah, for sure. So do you recall anything from your childhood that you now know was because of your Hungarian heritage, like any special traditions or foods or even just other things?
Well, basically everything. That's a hard one to pick out because I was influenced in every direction in the Hungarian community, in every category. Dance, language. Actually, language really comes up a lot for me. I learned so much about it, and I became fluent because of the Hungarian school and because of the Hungarian folk dancing. I spent hours memorizing the lyrics to the songs, transcribing them in my notebook, practicing a lot. So really, I would say Hungarian folk dancing taught me to speak Hungarian well and to understand it well.
Well, and following the music, I mean, music is very important. I use it also to learn Hungarian better, just because, first of all, I love music, but then just the phrasing that happens and the pronunciation. I mean, it's just a great way to hear that rhythm in your ear, but also in a memorable way with the music. So
definitely.
How fun. Okay. So obviously you heard a lot of Hungarian growing up, and you're fluent speaker. Are you still involved with others who speak Hungarian?
Yes, when I first moved to Vancouver 25 years ago, one of my first friends was Hungarian. I reached out to the Hungarian community here, which was like an extended family again, because Hungarians are the same everywhere. So I fit right in.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So my best friend is from Yugoslavia, from Sobotka.
Oh, yeah. Serbia.
Yeah, she came. Serbia.
I think. Well, now it's Serbia.
Well,
but yes.
She came over a month. She moved to Vancouver from Serbia a month before I moved to Vancouver. So we have a long history together.
Yes. And you both needed each other at the same time. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
How very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about your embroidery passion. And I would say it's a passion just because I know it's been a long time that you've been doing it. So let's talk a little bit about that, how long you've been doing embroidery and how you got started doing it.
Well, my parents took us to the Hungarian church from birth, really. I was baptized there. So I'm guessing I learned to embroider at age 5, starting with a cross-stitched bookmark. But that was at the Hungarian school. But my mother was very much involved with the folk dance community there. And she did a lot of embroidery and sewing and costuming. And so I joined her when I was old enough. I joined her and became the costumer of several folk dance groups there. And she taught me everything I know about embroidery, knitting, crocheting, sewing, fashion research, period costume research. We got into sewing the period costumes for the Hungarian balls. I don't know if you've heard the word Magyar.
I have not.
No, Magyar means decorative Hungarian. The nobility, right, were in the courts.
Okay.
So we would have a Hungarian ball that was organized by the Engineers Association, or the Hungarian Engineers Association.
Okay.
And it raised money charitably, raised money for helping us young kids go to college or go to university, which I benefited from as well.
Sure. So when you had a ball, were they set in different time periods, and then each ball would be a little bit different that way? Or did you just have period costumes that kind of belonged to a general period, and then that was how it worked?
Yeah, it belonged to a general period.
Okay.
Yeah. It was set up the same way. And they were organized all over Canada. I know in Calgary they had one, I believe in Saskatchewan. Wherever there was a Hungarian community, there was usually a Hungarian ball.
Yeah, same in US too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So getting back to embroidery, whenever my mom was doing something, I always asked her if I could help. Of course, little kids do that, right?
Sure.
So she slowly showed me, gave me projects, and I fell in love with embroidery because it was all around me. Like all my Hungarian friends' houses, had all kinds of doilies and tablecloths, and and of course the folk costumes were so beautiful, and I just loved looking at it. I like touching it. So when I became a graphic artist, I used my graphic artist skills or technical skills to draw the Hungarian patterns. And then when I took a computer graphics course, that made me very happy because it's made it easier to draw the Hungarian patterns. That's where I am now. I'm still drawing them. I'm still drafting the patterns. And from the computer, I send it to the printer, and then they can print it onto fabric. And it's just really cool. Or I trace them at home on a light box.
Right. The old-fashioned way.
Yep. I started on the window, right?
Well, and it's, it's interesting to see how that has all evolved to now. The computer technology is still, it's your ideas and essentially it's your hand, but it's digitized. And so it makes it easier to reproduce. But
especially
it's still
flipping the design if it's symmetrical. You do one side and you flip it over and do the other side. Before computers, when I was doing it by hand, it took hours and hours and hours to trace and retrace and just develop the shapes over and over and over the tracing paper. The computers, of course, made it easier.
For sure. So do you have a favorite embroidery region that you like?
I do. My 3 favorites are the ones I grew up with. Of course, Kalocsai, Montreal. And my new favorite from 20 years ago is Sióvárdi. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have not. Where is that?
They're all Sióvárdi. Well, I don't remember exactly where it is on the map, but these 3 have the reason I like them is because they have very colorful patterns, and they're very dense with the embroidery, the flowers and all the leaves are close together. And it's just endless different designs. I love color, and I love popping color.
Okay. Well, good. Okay. So you draw your own designs, as you mentioned. Yeah.
Well, and influenced by, of course, original pieces, authentic pieces, vintage pieces. I do a lot of research online. So they're not 100% my designs because they're based on the region's rules of design.
And how is that easy to find, the region's rules, or do you just kind of deduce it from seeing the designs over time?
Yes. To the second part.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because there are distinct. I mean, there's definitely distinctions between coloring, kinds of flowers, technique. Whether it's embroidery or cross stitch, or there's so much to learn about this world of embroidery. Even just aside from learning how to embroider, just
Definitely.
The stitches is another piece of it all. So, do you start with a blank slate when you do your embroidery, or have you done embroidery on like a shirt or a pair of jeans or other clothing?
Yeah. Growing up, I used to embroider all sorts of things, colors on blouses, pencil cases. I'd make all sorts of things and put embroidery on them. But I found that with a lot of use, they would wear out very quickly. The threads would break and it would just look very dull. And so I shifted my focus to more like tablecloths and doilies and things that you can frame and hang on the wall. They're more preserved that way for longer periods of time.
Sure. Okay. So, and I can tell just in the several conversations that we've had that you are a natural encourager. So if there were some things that you might tell somebody that's starting out in embroidery, or for somebody that's frustrated or intimidated by embroidery, what would you say?
I think the first roadblock is the fear of it not looking good. Everything in life takes practice, patience, and perseverance. And I'm still learning and practicing. So it's just like yoga or anything else that you learn. You just keep practice all your life, keep learning. And the most important part of it is to enjoy it. The second roadblock is hurrying to finish the project. It takes time and patience, but the journey should be the pleasurable part, or the point, really. my embroidery time is my zen, where I completely decompress and relax. I embroider slowly and try to make it last as long as possible. So I'm like almost disappointed when it's finished because I have to start another one. And so the perfect setup is very important, where it can enhance the experience, where you have a bright lamp, a comfortable chair, and Netflix.
If you don't need a video tutorial to get you through.
Yeah.
So how many hours would you say that you do embroidery during a week for fun?
I would say 2 hours a day.
Okay.
It's when I at the end of the day after supper, we sit down to watch TV. That's when I embroider. It's like I really need that time to relax, and I use embroidery to do it. And my whole body deflates, and I take deep breaths. It just comes on its own. I go through withdrawal when I don't do it.
Well, I think I'd have to practice quite a bit for it to become like a natural, so natural that it's like, I mean, I'm sure it's like breathing for you, where it's just a part of what you do. And so it sounds relaxing. I feel like I should give it a shot. Like, I want that zen. I like that.
It's not everybody's cup of tea. Yeah, my yoga teacher yesterday, we were talking about embroidery. She said, I just couldn't do it. She said, I got to move my body, and I have to run and dance and hop. And so really.
And that's the nice thing, is it's all kinds of people in the world, and there's always something for each person to find that they can fall in love with and create with. So
yeah, what's most important is when you learn something new, you have to take deep breaths and go, it's okay. However it turns out, it's okay. I'll just pick up the next one and practice on that one. And it is what it is, and it's okay. Just breathe and slow down. And I think the most important thing is just slow down. Don't be in a hurry to finish it. Just give it the time it needs.
Well, and I think too. So, for example, I would look at something that you've made, and I think, oh man, that's amazing. I could never do that. So then I start on my first piece. Well, of course, I'm looking at my first piece, and I'm looking at your 600th piece, and I'm wondering why mine doesn't look like yours. Well, your very first pieces weren't perfect, and as you might say, you still aren't perfect, but they're always getting better as you're always practicing, and so that's the goal.
Yeah, I look back on some pieces I did when I was a kid, and I thought, wow. But I thought they were pretty good when I did them back then,
Well, and they probably were compared to your the 5 pieces before. So it's just that, there's always this level of improvement. So I think I shouldn't let myself get hung up on some of that. So, so let's talk a little bit about your embroidery videos and kits that you have developed. What motivated you to design them?
Well, about 15 years ago, I had an idea of sharing my designs and techniques with the world, because I thought, why am I keeping this to myself? Life events prevented me from doing that at the time. So 12 months ago, but when COVID hit, it's been a year now, right?
Yeah, a little bit more. Yep.
I had already been teaching my sister-in-law to embroider. She'd come over and she couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't come over anymore. So I thought, well, how about I make some videos for her so she can do it at home?
Good idea.
And at the same time, a friend in Montreal asked me if I would teach her. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I created about 13 videos, step by step. I created a kit that you can buy and follow along with the videos. And I just finished them, and that was a lot of fun. And I thought, okay, I got my technique out to the world.
Yeah. Even though it was an idea, what you said was 14 years ago, how sometimes it takes that long for things to, all the elements to be right.
Yeah.
So.
I had the time to do it.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I'm excited in part because I'm a beginner when it comes to embroidery, and most of the people I know are beginners and not so skilled. So it's nice to have these techniques available to watch on a video, since, it's not like I can just jump into your living room, which I think would be a lot more fun, of course. But
yeah.
but to watch the videos and to see the technique and to know the person behind that, because a lot of times you don't necessarily get to know the person behind some projects. So it's super fun to know that you are the person that's behind it, and how much history with embroidery is behind all that you do, because you have quite an extensive history, which is exciting. And it's fun to see, how things have evolved over time, from your connections and the things that you did as far as costuming and those kinds of things, to then the graphic design, and how, and then your mom's history of, and the research ideas, how that's all kind of come into what is happening now with your embroidery kits. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these we will be offering on our website. So I will be sure to put a link in the show notes. Where can people watch your YouTube videos?
Well, my YouTube channel is called LillukaCrafts.
Okay.
And you just search that on YouTube and you'll find them.
Okay. And I'll make sure I put a link for that too, just so people make sure they spell it correctly and all that good stuff. And it'll be just easy for them to click on that. So thank you so much for visiting with me today about your embroidery.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Yes, super fun, and just fun to hear more of your history and your connection with embroidery, because I just didn't realize it was quite as extensive as it is. And I love the commonality of the folk music and the folk dancing and the songs and all that. So I enjoy that. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Hungarian Living podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lilla Horvath, lifelong embroiderer. We will include links in the show notes to the things we mentioned in this episode. And if you'd like to sign up for our e-newsletters that feature products, but also a lot of information of general interest to those with Hungarian heritage, send an email to podcast@hungarianliving.com and we will get you connected. Have a great week. Hungarian Living is a division of Magyar Marketing, the Hungarian store, where you can find meaningful gifts with Hungarian style. Check us out at magyarmarketing.com. And special thanks to Stephen Chichek and the Animal Cannibals for the show music. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Hungarian Living, please subscribe and share this podcast with your favorite Hungarian. Check out our show notes for links to resources mentioned in this episode. If you have a question or comment, email us at podcast@hungarianliving.com. We'll catch you next time.